So, who was the most influential person in your life that helped you realize musician's journey?
Well, I guess in most ways that would be my brother. So my brother Steve, my older brother, older by 2 years, he kind of got the bug first. He well he found the instrument that he really resonated with, and I guess that's sort of the main thing. He took up the banjo. I mean, of all instruments, he's a 14-year-old kid playing banjo, but he just attached to that thing, and he would spend 8 hours a day in his room learning to play the banjo till his fingers bled and stuff. And I was being introduced to instruments, and I tried piano lessons and the recorder, and and it was just like I don't know. And then one day my brother was like, okay, I'm starting a band, and I want you to play mandolin. All right. And this is what a mandolin sounds like. And we have our first gig in 2 weeks. So you need to learn it. And I was like, okay. And I did. I learned the 3 songs that he wanted me to learn. And we played the talent show, and we won first place, and I never looked back. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he was
incredible. You never looked back with him. I mean, you and him were joined at the hip for a very long time.
For a very long time. Yeah. I mean, we ended up kind of like, we didn't really look at it at that point in our teenage years as like being a professional thing. I mean, over and beyond, we had a band, we made money at it, it was great, and we had a good time, and met girls, which is really the only reason you get into music. And because there's really nothing else that you get out of it. But then when we went off to college, he was like, he wanted to go be a pirate. So he went to California Maritime Academy to get his third mate's license. And he was going to get a charter boat and charter people around the Caribbean. That was his thing. And I wanted to be a movie director. I thought that was my calling was going to be. And so I went off to USC to go into their brand new, incredibly epic film school that was being built at the time. And it was weird because I never got into film school. I applied like 8 times, never made it. Applied at other places, Cal Arts, NYU, UCLA, all these places, and they never let me in. Steve hated being a sailor. So, he was basically, he's like, oh, I thought I'd be in the Caribbean. Basically, I'm the truck driver of the sea. And yeah, he hated it. But, in between jobs, he would come back to where I was going to college there at USC, and come back to Los Angeles and hang out. And then, he'd just be putting this bug in my ear, like, we should skip all this and just like start a band and become millionaires. We should do that. We should do that. And finally, when I graduated, I thought I had to get my degree or my parents would kill me. And so I got my degree, promptly flushed it down the toilet, and we started a band.
So, John, tell everybody where you grew up.
I grew up in Southern California, down in the San Diego area. So I was born in El Cajon. And then when I was about 7, we moved into the North County, into Escondido. So I grew up there, until I was about 18, lived in the San Diego area. It was great. Loved being there, living there, growing up there. It was a great place to grow up. Then I moved off to Los Angeles when I was 18 to go to college.
What did your parents do for a living?
So that's such a great question, because they really did a lot of different things, and they really leapfrogged each other in their careers a lot. So My parents were very young when they got married. I mean, they specifically want to get married, really young. And so they did. I think they were 20 and 21. And, by the time they were 26 and 27, they had 3 boys. My dad worked in at a defense factory down in San Diego because, it's a naval town, and especially back then. And he eventually started his own auto upholstery company, and he made pimped out customized vans for a long time. He made these, these. So this is the 1970s, right? And so he would take these Ford Econoline vans, and he was like the first person ever, like, pimp my van. So he would take these Ford Econoline vans, he'd put the shag carpeting in the back, and the fold out chairs, and the wood paneling, and the mirrored ceilings, and all this stuff. And they were called tailor-made vans. And so down in San Diego, you'd see these vans going down the street with their spare on the back that had the tailor-made cover on it, and flames down the side, and dragons, and all that kind of 70s shit that was super. So he did that for a long time. So for a while, both my parents worked as social workers, for the government. My dad was one of the first heads of the Equal Opportunity Commission. And then when my mom got into her 40s and was looking at, getting at least to an empty nest situation, or, at least the kids can take care of themselves without setting the place on fire, she went back to college, and she went to law school, but hated that. And then she got a degree in these newfangled computer things. And so she went to work for some software companies. And back then it was all like Fortran and punch cards and that kind of thing. And she eventually started working her way up the corporate ladder. And all this time, my dad is doing other upholstery shops, and he's starting his writing career. My dad has written about 20 books on auto body paint and repair, upholstery, different engines. And he's 83 now and just finished up his last book, which was all on this Chevy engine that is specifically for motorboats. So they're sort of doing that. And then mom gets to the top of her field. She becomes CEO for this database company here in San Francisco, takes her golden parachute, and they retired. And then they've just been partying ever since.
Gee, it's ever a wonder why you're a jack of all trades yourself. It kind of fell from the tree pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, Dad was a musician. When he was a kid, he was giving accordion lessons. He played the accordion, gave accordion lessons, and I guess that was a thing in the 50s. Everyone loved accordion back then. But then he also played banjo and a couple other instruments. So it was kind of a musical family, kind of a creative family. It was interesting because it was both a creative family and a there were both sides of the brain there. There was a creative side and definitely a logical, math, science, politics side to it as well.
You've got to tell me, you've had to have had a Thanksgiving or a Christmas where Dad brought out the accordion, you brought out the mandolin, and brought out the banjo, and you guys jammed. You had to have one of those.
So there was, and what was crazy though is that after a while, Dad would stop taking out the accordion, or he would stop taking out the banjo, and he'd just like, "Hey kids, play some music, play some tunes," and we were like dancing monkey time at it was, yeah. Awesome. But it's always actually been a dream of mine, even now, to like be on the stage and have Dad come up and play the accordion. So,
what is one thing that your brother helped you with, instilled you early on with music that you kind of have always resonated with you and kind of kept with you?
He had a lot of discipline, and for him, it was just, it was very much practice. You just got to practice over and over and over and over and over and over again. Practice. And I was not as disciplined, but, I listened to him and tried as hard as I could. But so in the early days of the band, he was like, this is the only way we're going to make it is if we practice 7 nights a week. We get together with the band 7 nights a week. So for the first almost the first year with the band, we practiced 7 nights a week. And then it was like, oh, we're going to practice 6 nights a week. We're going to play a gig on the 7th night. And we did that for about a year. And then finally it was, all right, we're going to practice 5 nights a week. We're going to play once a week, and you get a day off. And I think that was because his girlfriend was telling him, you take a night off or you're not going to get any anymore. I know there's like 2 schools of thought. And, you know, it's funny because you got guys like Gary Vee who are like, you have to work harder than everybody else to make it. And it's true. If you're that guy who will work harder than everybody else, then you will make it. That works. It just takes a lot of hard work.
Right.
Yeah.
And musicians aren't necessarily known. Well, I mean, they put a lot of work in and everything like that. But you know, the party aspect of it, especially if you're a rock band, that's kind of, you
Absolutely.
know, there's a little bit of that takes over.
There's the talent aspect, right? And if you're really talented at something, you need less practice than others do, right? Sure. And, you know, if you have the gift, as they say, and I always downplayed the gift, and it's probably because I never had it, right? But I definitely started on a foundation of, you know, talent is a measure of your dedication. But yeah, there are these guys who are super freaking talented, so they don't have to practice that hard, and they can party more. And it always seems so unfair, but it's true.
So you guys you get out of college. Is this the UnInvited that comes together at the end of college?
At the end of college, yeah, we were we had a college band called the Bogarts, and you know, you talk about a party band. I mean, all we did was party. We just had these epic parties. The cops would come and shut us down. We lived in this house that was just 1 block off of campus, and we all lived together, and we all practiced in the living room. And then we'd have these parties every weekend out in the backyard. And, you know, every weekend, you know, we'd go till about 11, and then the cops would come and just shut it down. And it was, from what I can remember, it was really fun. But after that, we decided, okay, well, we're going to have a serious band now. It's a serious band. And that's when we started the UnInvited. So, yeah.
When did you guys record for the first time? Do you remember that?
We recorded a 3-song demo. So this is back in the Jurassic period, right? So this is years ago. So we recorded
reel
reel to reel, and then transferred to cassettes. And, you know, you had your cassettes, you'd hand out your cassettes, and you had this 3-song demo. And, you know, it was awful. And I don't want to be immodest, but it was like awful with these sparks of genius. Like, right, you could tell that there was something there, you know, but it wasn't quite there yet, and it would be years before it was really there. Yeah, and it was kind of, you know, it was weird and different than what everybody else was doing in LA at the time, because this is like 1990 now, okay, and you know, on the one hand, you've got, you know, on the alternative rock side, you got Jane's Addiction coming up, and you're right before Seattle is about to break out. And, you know, there in LA, there's this kind of like a little bit of this like the rockabilly thing is still kind of happening. And there's this Paisley underground, this like kind of psychedelic thing happening. And there's not really like a consistent thing happening, but it's sort of brewing something, and we weren't any of it. We were all of it and none of it. It was God only knows what it was. Yeah. So it took us a while to like really latch on to what we were doing and develop our own style and actually have that style match up with what was happening at the times enough that someone would take commercial interest in us.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were ahead of Toad the Wet Sprocket, Jimmy Eat World. I mean, bands that probably you would have toured with and been associated with, most likely.
Yes. Toad came out with that first album, I think about 3 or 4 years before we got signed. And actually, I remember we went to South by Southwest one year, and we went to South by Southwest every year, actually. We were there one year. You know, to pass out, you know, we would go to the Four Seasons, and we would scour the Four Seasons for someone who looked like an A&R guy. And we'd, you know, try to get him our tape. And Toad was the huge band at South by that year. We actually got to talk to the guys for a brief second there in the Four Seasons Lounge. But the night before, we saw their show. And we were so blown away by the guitarist's tone. He had this greatest tone. And so my brother and I, we made our way up to the front of the stage to like go check out what his tone was, what, you know, the amp he was playing through and the pedal board he was working with. And this guy, he totally saw that that's exactly what we were doing, that we were checking out his tone. And so he backed away from his pedal board and moved to the side so that we could see his amp. And we're like, thanks, yeah. That also kind of spurred on bands like Bare Naked Ladies, that, you know, that also made it possible for the sound that we were developing to, you know, become commercially viable.
Your brother's a huge part of your music life. I mean, he's, you know, you've been doing this, you were on this big journey together. I mean, do you think it was easier because you had each other, or did it make things more difficult and added more pressure?
It was definitely easier because we had each other. So we were incredibly fortunate enough to have a good brother relationship. We weren't like the Robinson brothers and the Black Crowes, or, you know, we were not throwing guitars at each other. And in fact, it was downright stupid how good it was, because, you know, at that point in time, you know, we were living together, and then we got a job together and we worked in the same freaking office. So we would get up together, we'd go to work together, we'd come home together, we'd go to practice together. I mean, it was just, and yet we never hated each other. And one of the best things that came out of that as well was that we had this really honest relationship with each other, where, you know, we could just, you know, we got past the point of just knowing who was BSing each other. So we just didn't even try anymore. So when it came to songwriting, you know, if Steve came up to me and was like, hey, got an idea for a song. Oh, God, yeah, no, that's awful. You know, okay. And then he would go back and work on it. You know, and same thing. You could just tell me, oh, yeah, that's pretty bad. You know, that hook is pretty good. I'd keep that, but the rest, okay. And, you know, no one took offense, and in that respect, you know, we brought out the best work from each other.
Yeah, it's tough to be just an ordinary man. Yeah, it's tough to be just an ordinary man. I ran into Jesus at a luxury hotel. I could see by his expression that he wasn't feeling well. I said, what's the matter? He said, everything is cool. Turned my Perrier to wine, then he walked across the pool. So I just stepped right up and said, this seems a little odd. He said, Steve, it ain't easy to be the son of God. And sometimes I wonder if I got what it takes to assume responsibility for everyone's mistakes. Yeah, he turned to me, so I hope you understand. Is an ordinary man. All I wanna be is an ordinary man.
All right, we have to talk about this. You guys had a brush with fame. I mean, you got signed to a big label. You guys were out there touring with big bands. I mean, stadium tours. You were doing the whole nine. And what did you learn about yourself that you use maybe as a reminder, or that has given you that you can look back now as positive from that experience?
Wow, great question. Two things I would say. One is that I get to have that in my memory bank, right? I get to look back on my life and say, well, I did this really super cool thing. That was a lot of fun. And I have some great stories of that time, of things that I did that so few people get an opportunity to do, you know, and how lucky and fortunate I am to have that. And, you know, in so many ways, I just absolutely won the lottery to have that experience in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is that I walked away knowing that these things are possible, right? That if you have some crazy ass, irresponsible, massive dream that you want to pursue, it can happen. It can work. You work hard, you stay focused, you do the work, all that stuff. Even though, when the band did break up and we kind of left it, and I went off into some, different, straight job career.
Yeah.
When I was at the point of like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something stupid and crazy and irresponsible again. I knew that I could. I knew that, okay, so here's what I got to do to make that happen. And that's good. That's good to have that experience of knowing, you can make your dreams come true,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because people do it. The people, they're out there and they get it done.
How much do you feel like the 90s was responsible for the Uninvited, or do you feel like the Uninvited was more responsible for the 90s?
Oh, wow. I love that question. There was definitely a confluence of great timing involved.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, there was an acknowledgement on our part, on the band's part, that if we want what we want, if we want to have a major record deal and be played on the radio and sell 1 million albums and go on a big tour, that there had to be concessions made to the marketplace. Mm-hmm. Okay. And this was something that had to, that we had to learn and had to be drilled into our heads, So when A&R guys would come to our shows and say, here's the thing, you guys are fun. You obviously know how to play your instruments. You know how to put on an entertaining show. I need a big hit single now. What's your big hit single? Then we eventually had to go to the drawing board and say, all right, we need to focus that way. We need to think about writing a big hit song, and we didn't want to do that in the way of like, okay, let's rip off this, that, and the other thing, because everyone would see through that.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to do it in a way where it felt like a sellout, but more felt like, okay, we are, really doing our craft well.
Yeah.
And so, in that respect, the 90s and what was happening in the 90s with the bands that we were, listening to or compared to, with Bare Naked Ladies, Toe the Wet Sprocket, Sugar Ray, and the whole ska punk thing that was happening, that was an influence that was coming at us, at a time where, as we kept writing, we kept sort of moving in that direction, or that was sort of, that was in our influence, in our roots. So it was a combination of a lucky confluence and a very conscious decision to make something commercial happen at that time. And it can certainly be contrasted with, what was happening in the late 80s when we first started. We were, like I said before, we were nothing like what was going on anywhere else, and not in a good way. We weren't trying to be super unique and original. We were just bad. And we didn't know we didn't know what we were doing. And the early 90s did not like us, and we did not like the early 90s, but the mid 90s, we started to get it together. And at the risk of droning on, it's an interesting sort of thing. So when Atlantic did release the album and the single's taking off, and we're in Kansas City, I think, and we get a call from the label, and the label says, look, we're going to give you some money and we want you to go buy some clothes. Yeah. And they're like, go buy some rock star outfits and look like rock stars. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. So we're in these shops, these like the thrift shops, and I don't know, we might have even gone into like what's that place? Anyway, Hot Topic, thank you. And we're wandering around and we're looking for stuff and we're buying stuff. And Bill, the bass player, is wandering around the store with cantaloupe eyes, like, what the fuck do I do? And he has no clue. And he comes up to me, he's like, what am I supposed to buy? What's cool? I have no idea. I'm like, dude, a major label record company just called you and gave you money and told you to go buy clothes, you define what's cool now.
Yeah.
If you put it on, it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Everybody, are you ready for some love? Oh, yeah. Let's climb aboard, baby. You and me. Let's do this. Oh my God, look what came in the mail today. It's the box, the magic box. Hey, 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 put me in the show. Okay, well, this is exciting. Question number 1. So you're a writer. Do you make a ton of money like that dude who wrote The Hunger Games? Okay, first of all, so it was a woman who wrote The Hunger Games, and in answer to your question, no. No, no, and definitely no.
Anything else is less than zero. Gotta be a mega multimedia hero.
The box that I bet has all of my books in it. Oh my God, there it is. Ta-da! I was not ready to rock. Now I am ready to rock.
Is there something that you that people would be surprised to know how novel writing and songwriting compare to one another that are similar?
Boy, there's actually a bunch of things. You got to hook them quick, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna sit down and write a book, that's a freaking project. This is gonna take me a month, right? And you're asking someone to really invest their time in reading a book.
Yeah.
And except for these freaks who do it all in one day. And I love them, but most of us are just like, all right, here's the book. And so in that case, you gotta hook them in fast. You gotta give them a reason to turn that page. And same thing with songwriting. You want to hook them in fast. Either a musical hook or a lyrical hook or something that really brings them in quick.
She's not good at painting. She's not good at art. She wants to be a beatnik, but she don't know where to start. Yeah, she's so pathetic that she melts my little heart in it. She's not good at singing. She can't hold a tune. When she reads her poetry, she clears up a mood. She wants to be tragic, but there's only one thing she can do. She's a successful vegetarian.
And there has to be some empathic element to it as well. The best song is the one where you say, oh, that's me. He's talking about me. That's me who does. I feel like that. I do that. That's me. And that's what you want in a good story, is for you to really sympathize with the main character or some character in that book, really latch onto them. So yeah, those are two, definitely universal things.
What has novel writing given you that songwriting or music hadn't?
One of the main reasons that I first started writing, long form writing novels was that it was the sort of thing that I could do on my own.
Yeah.
I didn't need a band, and I didn't need to schedule a practice, and I didn't need to organize anything. You can just sit there and write. And especially at that time in my life, that's what I needed, because, I was married and I was having kids, and so it's like, oh, I have 15 minutes. What can I do? And what creative thing can I do in 15 minutes? I can write, even if it's one paragraph. Even if it's one index card, up on the storyboard, it was something that I could do. And and so that was really, important at that period in life.
All right, let's talk about Paris with Life. Let's get into this book.
Okay.
It seems like that traveling and being in a setting has always played a huge role in your writing and life. And is that for you the foundation, or do you see it as its own character that kind of helps breathe the story to the life you're trying to tell?
It's definitely, that is part of my experience. Before writing Paris with Life, the first, other novel that I wrote was a pretty epic science fiction book. Because that was my first love. Science fiction is my first,
Right.
Yeah, it's what I read, it's what I watch. I loved it. And so it's like, okay, if I get to write one book before I die, it's going to be a science fiction book. And I tried to make it very character driven and, really resonate, with the characters and make them believable, and believable dialogue and believable situations. It was, I'm not going to say it was an epic failure, but it was a 5-year learning process is what it turned out to be. I basically wrote about 1 million words in total for that book, just shaving them down, throwing things out constantly. And it was a humongous learning experience. And when I went to go try to sell it to a publisher, after, literally 170 rejections, there was one agent who's like, yeah, I'll read it. And she read it, and she came back and she said, you know what? Your characters are great, and your dialogue is great. And, these story arcs work. And, I'm not going to represent the novel, but I just think maybe you should write something that you really know about. And it's like, oh yeah, lesson number 1, write what you know. Yeah, good call on that. And that's totally what I did for Paris with Life. I'm like, all right, I know about wannabe rock stars. I know about wine, and I know these things about the human condition, right? I can give insight as to these specific things. So that's what I'll write about. Having the main character be, a one-hit wonder rock star of the 90s. This isn't Far From Home, right? This isn't me going out on a limb here. I know that experience. You have to dramatize it, okay? Yeah. My personal story is just not that interesting. All right. Yeah. It's interesting, but it's not that interesting. And so there had to be a lot of, really playing that up. But yeah, that was the experience that I knew. So that's what I wrote about.
Yeah. So, and in telling this through Corbett's eyes, you're really putting a lot of trust in him, because you are sharing some things about your own life that you're incorporating into here. So talk a little bit about the characteristics that you instilled in Corbett that kind of, mimicked your life, but also protected it and gave him life.
It's interesting that you put it that way, because I hope that, a really good story is one where you don't protect yourself. You really, what did Hemingway say? That you sit at the typewriter and bleed. It's so true. You have to be 110% honest. Even when you're lying, you have to be 110% honest, because there's this great screenwriting teacher, Bob McKee, and he wrote this amazing book on story, exactly. And I was super lucky point to be going to USC the 1 year that he was teaching screenwriting at USC. And I didn't know that he was a god at that time. But one of the things that he said in this class, at the beginning of the class, was, why do people go to movies? Why do people watch movies? And everybody gave their stony answer, and it was all wrong. And he's like, people go to movies to see how other people solve their problems. And it's like, oh yeah, right. And that's, I think I live by that in my writing, is that you want to see these characters get into terrible situations and then resolve them. And what you're looking for at the end of the book, the reason you're staying compelled and the reason you're turning those pages and you keep reading on, is you guys think, how does this guy solve this problem? How did he get out of this? And so the more honest and the less you protect yourself and the more honest you can be on that page, and the more that grabs you, and the more, the higher the stakes are. And so when I was writing Corbett, I really took a look at a lot of the mistakes that I made in life and, emphasized them and put them there in the page. Yeah, some of it's way too close to home. Yeah, and there are thinly veiled, circumstances in there that I'm sure a battery of ex-wives are going to look at and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you said that." So that's
How important has humor been in what you write? Is that a key element in your writing style for everything?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I don't want to just say, "Oh, you sound such a funny guy, so I write humor." But I think that early on, even in the band, back when Steve and I were in bands before the UnInvited, and we were in bluegrass bands and stuff. I mean, we were always attracted to kind of a humorous element to everything. I love the music of Tom Lehrer. Okay, there's an old obscure, and I listened to Dr. Demento all the time. And, we had songs that were played on Dr. Demento. So I'm like, I've made it. And it's always been a part, of pretty much everything. And it's not always a good thing. I mean, it was difficult in the music business for sure. I mean, there were times, when we were straight up rejected, like, you guys are a funny band. Is that what you are? You're a funny band. We don't need funny bands. And at the very end of our career, when we were making terrible career choices, one of those choices was, the label came to us and said, "Okay, look, here, we know how to market two things. Okay. We know how to market a party band, and we know how to market a serious band. You can't be both. You can't do that. You can't have these two lead singers, and you can't have these really serious fucking songs about suicide and depression, and then a song about getting too high to go to the supermarket and get tuna and bread. You can't do that. You can do one or the other. You can do one or the other, because we know how to market that, but we don't know how to do both." And, so of course we're all, "Oh, but we're artists, so we can do both. Fuck you. We, you can't tell us what to do. We're artists."
Right.
And, so they dropped us from the label. It's a double-edged sword, as long as you, but it's not as long as you stay in your lane. Right.
So does that mean, like, now that you're writing long form and stuff like that, is it more thinly veiled? Is it kind of just, or is it more pungent for you? Do you think it's what you use like a punctuation mark on what you're trying to accomplish, or is it more of a, I'm going to blend it in with some seriousness?
It's a great question, because one of the few advantages of being this old is that I know more than I used to, right? I believe, I sure as hell hope that I have a greater insight to the human condition at my age now than I did when I was 20. And if I can express that in ways that make people have that Bob McKee reaction of, "Oh, this is, I want to see how he solves this problem. Oh my God, that's a great way of solving the problem. Oh God, yes." Then that's what I want. I mean, that's what I really, really want. the humor part of it is hopefully just an element that keeps people interested, you know, that makes them want to turn the page even more because, oh, that was funny. I wonder if something else funny is going to happen. And then bam, you hit them with something serious. And like, oh God, that's good too. It's another element. And I just, you know, I think I do that element well. And so it's going to be there. But, you know, at the same time, you're I mean, going back to the original, you know, sort of argument, there's the marketing aspect as well. There's the commercial aspect as well.
Are you a book or are you a serious book? Right?
Yeah, exactly. and does the market want a book about a dude hitting 50 who's having these questions about his life and, you know, wondering why he's constantly failing and how does he seek redemption? You know, is that what the marketplace is looking for in a book right now? Which isn't something that I particularly thought of with this book. The thinking for me more with this book was, all right, let's just write a really good book, okay? And taking all the experience from my last book and then apply this whole idea of write what I know and see if I can write a really good book like that. And that was, you know, I wasn't quite like thinking, oh, this is a big hit song.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm going to make a guess, knowing what I know about writing and having written books and everything, that part of what enables you to do this book and keep Corbett the way he is through the ancillary characters that he's going to encounter that allowed you to kind of, you know, settle in with everything else, the humor, the underlying, you know, storytelling and giving out your, you know, being your best honest person. Would that be a fair statement? And was there a character that you particularly gravitated toward to help more than others that maybe you were surprised you didn't think was going to be that for you?
Yes. To me, Seamus O'Flaherty, Shay in the book, he kind of served as not only Corbett's, you know, kind of partner in crime and foil, as you say, but also as the more logical voice, you know, of trying to keep, you know, say, look, you know, there's this difference between this dream you've got and the reality of the world. And you have to find that place in the middle, you know, where, you know, the two kind of line up. And what's been interesting about Shay is, so a friend of mine and I have been working on a TV adaptation of the book. And in doing so, we've had to take these really deep dives into the characters because you can't in a TV show, you aren't like following the inner monologue of your main character. It's either has to be said with dialogue or shown on the screen. Right. And so in order to get those bits, those pieces that are either dialogue or shown on the screen, we've had to take these really deep dives into who these characters are and what their motivations are. And Shay has been like the big one. And it's like, okay, how do we keep this guy, you know, as his own person who's, you know, not just the loyal best friend, you know, it's not a Mary Sue, you know, it's got to be his own like real thing. And it's been a lot of fun, like getting into his backstory and what he's really about. And so if there is actually if we ever do, you know, a follow-up to this book or something, or, you know, if the TV show takes off, you know, it's going to be fun to, you know, write these characters again with this even greater insight as to who they are and what functions they serve in each other's lives.
I love that you're getting into your original dream and filmmaking kind of in a sort of different way, but yeah.
In a sort of back-asswards way, yes. But you know, it's interesting because I'll say it again. I know exactly why every film school in the world rejected me. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to tell a story. Yeah. You know, that's not what I was ready to do. And I think I am now.
I dumped my gin and swamp mud into the sink. I'm just saying I'm more like a Gorn, rugged, determined, capable of lifting very large boulders. Sydney laughed and then took another sip of her Manhattan and shuddered. Well, you get 50 points in a quivering ovary for the Gorn reference, but that just makes you all the more adorable. Her warm smile soon faded into a much more serious expression. She looked down at her drink and stirred it distractedly. So the truth is, I'm here to make a confession. Oh? She drummed her fingers against the bar, still not daring to make eye contact. I wanted to let you know that I was the one who posted that video. Holy crap, I whispered. Of course. Who else could it have been? That video, that freaking video, 7.4 million views to date and a permanent part of the public record until electrons cease to exist. In truth, the irony did not escape me that a 40-second clip of me emptying the contents of my stomach was seen by 14 times more people than had bought my major label album. Had this been a thing back in 1995, I would have gladly puked the words to Sensitive Ponytail Guy on camera and been a lot more famous.
Do you ever see yourself in music again? Are you still writing music?
Yeah, absolutely. So I probably wouldn't have, I mean, I'm basically kind of 100% quit music for several years, but mostly because, you know, when my brother moved back to Maui, I just didn't have the spark anymore. And it was kind of two reasons. One is that he was gone, and it's like making music was all about, you know, hanging out with my brother and doing this really cool, fun thing. And so without him in the picture anymore, it was kind of like, eh. And then there was also, there was some burnout involved, you know, sure, of like, okay, I've done that for 30 years. Now what? And so, yeah, so I started, you know, writing more and sort of left that behind. Then when my brother came back, you know, he's got the true calling. He's the real deal. I mean, he went to Maui, he started a band, it became super popular. He hung out, you know, his kids learned music. They hung out with Mick Fleetwood at Fleetwood's in Maui. I mean, it was just like, he was just, and then when he comes home, he's like, all right, we're starting the band. We're starting the band. I'm like, of course we're starting the band. Okay, we're starting the band. So, you know, he's only been back like less than a year. And in fact, we got to practice tonight. And we're trying to practice COVID-free now by doing it out on the porch with everybody 6 feet distant. And, you know, all the clubs and restaurants are shut down, so we got no venue to play. But, you know, when it does open back up, you know, we'll start playing again. I love it. It's super fun. And that's, you know, that's the only reason, you know, we're doing it is because we love it and it's super fun. And I do want to do a new album. I want to do a new album because I got something to say again. And the pressure is now off to write a hit song. It's like, I'll just write whatever the fuck I please. And I don't care. I don't care if it's a hit or not. I want people to enjoy it. I mean, that will always be a thing. I want people to like listen to the record and go, oh, damn, that's a good record. Wow, I'm going to put that on again. Of course I want to do that. But do I expect by any stretch of the imagination that we'd like be signed to a label again or something would happen? God, no. Now, my brother's going to give you a different story. He'd say, of course, that's exactly what I want. But yeah, I mean, it'll always be something I love to do, love to perform. And now I've got a different perspective that I think would be cool to put on an album.
Is there something freeing about that process now because you're not encumbered by all those thoughts of you know, making it or you know, working for this goal or that goal, just doing music to do music? It's not
that it's a freeing thing for me right now stylistically. Like, ooh, I would never do this stylistically. You know, my style is my style and it's not going to change. Yeah. Any album that my brother and I make is going to sound like an Uninvited album. There's just, you know, that's just the way it's going to be. But I can say what I want to say or, you know, structure how I want to do it. And there's no, I mean, I really wish that I had a whole lot of money. I wish that we had made a ton of money as the band, but not being concerned about that is the most freeing part. It's like, you know, it's like we don't, you know, we're not, because it doesn't cause the stress of it. There's a lot of stress on like, God, is this a good song? Is this a hit song? What are people going to think? You know, are we going to get people in? Or is, you know, the A&R guy is going to show up at the gig tonight? Well, and like, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
I think the music business has changed forever. Again,
Mhm.
Major labels are really passé in this day and age already, and there was a shift with Napster and all that, and the shift
Yes.
really changed the music industry and destroyed it and just blew it up and made almost everything indie at that point, because it became small labels, and the big labels would then just use the small labels to produce stuff, and they're still doing that to some respect. I mean, some of them have garnered some bigger names and
Mhm.
big personas for that, but it's a very few now. It's almost like the big five in publishing. There's only RCA and a couple others that are left around,
Right. You're absolutely 110% right, and it's an entirely different world now. And, on the good side, what you said is exactly right. Any small band, has instant worldwide distribution, right? You just put it on your YouTube or TikTok or Reddit or, whatever format you want to use to get your music out there. And yeah, the world has access to it. Now, if the world is watching is a whole other thing, but that's the other element too, is that if you're going to be a musician now, you have to market it yourself. It's not like that option, when I was a kid, of like, wonder if I'm going to market this myself. How crazy, how rebellious, how cutting edge. No, there's no option. And I think you're absolutely right in the respect that the whole paradigm of a major label out there looking to discover the next new talent, that's completely shifted as well. They're out there looking at data as it streams through, like, oh, look, this song has gotten 50,000 listens. Who are these guys?
Yeah.
Click. Yeah, let's get them. And and it's not discovering the talent in some smoky club. I mean, not to put too rosy a spin on it. I mean, when we were coming up in the clubs, they were constantly raising the bar on us. Oh, wow, you got 100 people in this club? That's great. Call me when you got 200 people in this club. Oh, you got 200 people in this club? That's great. Call me when there's a line around the block. Oh, you got a line around the block? And so God only knows. I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to be the guy standing on the grass, you kids get off my lawn. It was so much better when I was a kid. Yeah.
So when you do get back out there, what are some of what are some of the set lists going to include from the old UnInvited? What are you going to dust off that you hadn't played in a while, or something? Maybe is there a couple songs that you really wish you had played during your heyday that you're gonna go back out there and bring back out into the forefront?
Yeah, my personal wish is to keep it hard. I want to go out and rock. I want to I want to make it loud and fast and aggressive. So there's songs like What God Said and Young and Beautiful, and maybe even some of the other loud, fast songs we did that we didn't get a lot of play on, like Leaving Trains and Should Have Been an Astronaut, and these Food Court Rockstar. Yeah, I want to rock.
Conquer California! Are you fucking ready to rock? Okay. We're like combined up here 200 years old or something. Okay? And we're ready to rock. We're ready. And I don't believe that you are ready to rock. That's wrong. You just rock. I think we're gonna have to do this. I think we're gonna have to do this total old school style. Old school rock. You're ready to rock. You're born to rock. Like Bruce Springsteen, only with rock. Only older. Yeah. Let's make this shit happen.
I don't know if you're watching a lot of these bands do these quarantine versions of older songs and do like acoustic setups, or do, you know, where they're far apart, where one guy records the guitar and one guy records it, and then they mix it together as it looks like they're just playing it together, but they're really doing it separately and creating this interesting dynamic. Is that something you look at and go, that's something I could do? Is it interesting to you at all?
Yeah, it's totally interesting to me. And at the very beginning of the quarantine, you know, back in the very, very, very early days when, you know, California first said, okay, you're in quarantine, stay in your freaking home. I did a bunch of, for about 3 weeks, I did quarantine lullabies, and I would go onto my Facebook page and I would fire it up and I would light a candle at night and sing a song. And it was super fun. And people, you know, loved having it there and count on it, you know, a little entertainment before going to bed. It got to be a lot of work, and it got to be very emotional. It was like, you know, oh man, this is starting to feel like, you know, we're all in a cave. And so I wanted to do, that whole thing you were talking about, where the you know, you get all the elements of the band together and you splice them all up so it looks like the band is playing. My God, is that a lot of work? The best I could ever do was like me and myself. I did a 2-track one, whereas, you know, me playing both guitars, and that was about it. And but getting everyone else, you know, together and syncing it all up. Oh man, that wasn't about to happen.
So what does every John Taylor written piece have to have in it?
Hope.
Nice.
Yeah, there's gotta be a way out.
Nice. The cool thing that I find is that there is this underlying indie spirit about you, that you've always kept that. And even with the hits, you guys still have a sound that is very definable by you guys. And so, and that comes from years of, you know, being indie and moving that forward. Do you feel like you were always, no matter, even in the major label days, that you guys were still pretty indie at that point, and you guys were feeling that vibe a lot more?
Yes. I mean, undoubtedly. You know, we had released 5 of our own albums before we got signed with Atlantic. You know, countless demo tapes and, you know, underground things, and a 45, you know, we did vinyl in the early days. Yeah, we really, and that was, you know, again, it's that confluence. It was by building our indie base and doing it ourselves, and thinking that we were never going to get signed. I mean, we basically threw in the towel on getting signed. We're like, this is never going to happen. Let's do our own thing. But then we started, you know, and in doing so, we started selling records and we started getting airplay. I mean, it was back in the days when you could get airplay on certain stations, you know, just doing it yourself. And we were selling records out of record stores, and that caught the label's attention. And they're like, oh, we want some of that action. And, you know, we were doing our little circuit here around the West Coast. And one of the early stations to really support us was KMBY down in Monterey. And basically what happened is the Atlantic rep, the radio rep, called KMBY to get their, you know, report on what's happening for the week, and talked to the program director and said, so how's Alanis Morissette doing? And the program was like, well, Alanis Morissette sucks, but we've got this band called the UnInvited that's #1 on the station right now. And he got on a plane the next day.